Imagine a land where empires rose and fell, where kings marched with armies and rebels fought in the shadows, where battles shaped not just borders but identities. Spain's history is not just written in books, it's carved into mountains, whispered through old cities, and remembered in the hearts of generations. Today, we step into that story, one of war and resilience, struggle and transformation. To understand how a nation was forged through centuries of conflict, in the early 8th century, Muslim forces from North Africa, known as the Moors, crossed into the Iberian Peninsula and swiftly conquered most of what is now Spain. The Visigothic Christian kingdoms that once ruled the region were pushed to the northern fringes. Over the next several centuries, the Christian kingdoms began a gradual campaign to reclaim the territory. This long and complex process is known as the Reconquista. It was not a single war, but rather a series of battles, truces, and shifting alliances that spanned nearly 800 years. The kingdoms of Asturias, León, Castile, Navarre, Aragon, and later Portugal were key players in this effort. The Reconquista was shaped not only by military conflict, but also by religious and political motivations. Christian leaders saw their cause as a holy struggle against Islamic rule, and the Catholic Church supported this view, often encouraging knights and nobles to join campaigns. Over time, Christian kingdoms began expanding southward, capturing major cities like Toledo in 1085, Córdoba in 1236, and Seville in 1248. Each victory brought cultural changes, including the imposition of Christian rule, the construction of churches, and sometimes forced conversions or expulsions of Muslim and Jewish communities. The final chapter of the Reconquista came in 1492, when the Catholic monarchs, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, conquered the Emirate of Granada, the last Muslim stronghold. This triumph symbolized the unification of Spain under Christian rule. The same year, they funded Christopher Columbus's voyage, marking the beginning of Spain's global empire. The Reconquista left a lasting impact on Spanish identity, religion, architecture, and society. It fostered a deep connection between Catholicism and Spanish national power, while creating centuries of cultural blending and conflict among Christian, Muslim, and Jewish populations throughout the Iberian Peninsula. In 1588, the Spanish Armada was launched by King Philip II of Spain as a grand naval fleet intended to invade England and overthrow Queen Elizabeth I. The tensions between Spain and England had been escalating for years due to religious conflicts, piracy, and political rivalry. Spain, a staunch Catholic power, saw Protestant England as a threat to the Catholic faith and to Spanish dominance in Europe. English support for Dutch rebels in the Spanish Netherlands and attacks by English privateers on Spanish ships further intensified hostilities. Philip II assembled one of the largest fleets ever seen at the time, consisting of around 130 ships, 30,000 men, and a complex plan to rendezvous with Spanish forces in the Netherlands before crossing the English Channel. However, the Armada faced challenges from the start. Poor communication, logistical issues, and delays weakened the effectiveness of the plan. As the fleet approached the English Channel, it was met by the faster and more maneuverable English Navy, commanded by seasoned leaders like Sir Francis Drake and Lord Charles Howard. The English used fireships and hit-and-run tactics to scatter and damage the Spanish formation. A decisive battle took place near Gravelines, where the Armada suffered heavy losses. After failing to link with the Spanish army and losing several key ships, the Armada was forced to retreat northward around Scotland and Ireland. Violent storms battered the remaining fleet, sinking many vessels and killing thousands of men. Only about half of the original ships made it back to Spain. The defeat of the Spanish Armada marked a turning point in naval history and European power dynamics. It demonstrated the vulnerability of even the most powerful empires and marked the rise of England as a dominant sea power. The failure deeply affected Spanish prestige and military confidence. The Napoleonic Wars reached Spain in 1808, when Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte sought to control the Iberian Peninsula as part of his broader campaign against Britain. Initially, France and Spain were allies, but Napoleon took advantage of internal Spanish instability and forced the abdication of the Spanish Bourbon monarchs. He installed his brother, Joseph Bonaparte, as King of Spain, a move that triggered widespread outrage among the Spanish people. This led to the beginning of the Peninsular War, one of the most brutal and prolonged campaigns of the Napoleonic era. Resistance broke out across the country, with citizens rising up in both organized military action and irregular guerrilla warfare. The term guerrilla itself originated from this conflict, as local fighters disrupted French supply lines, ambushed soldiers, and coordinated with regular Spanish armies. The brutality of the French response only deepened Spanish resistance. British forces, led by the Duke of Wellington, entered the conflict to support the Spanish against Napoleon's occupation. They fought alongside Portuguese and Spanish troops in a series of battles across the rugged landscapes of the peninsula. These combined forces gradually wore down the French army, which was overstretched and facing resistance on multiple fronts in Europe. Major victories at battles like Salamanca and Vitoria turned the tide in favor of the Allies. The war devastated much of Spain, with cities destroyed, civilians caught in the crossfire, and the economy deeply affected. By 1814, Napoleon was forced to retreat, and King Ferdinand VII was restored to the throne. The Peninsular War weakened Napoleon's grip on Europe and exposed the limitations of French military power. It also ignited a new sense of nationalism in Spain and laid the foundation for future political upheaval and reform in the decades that followed. Asterisk. The Spanish Civil War began in 1936 after years of political instability, economic inequality, and social tensions across the country. Spain was deeply divided between conservatives who supported monarchy, the military, and the Catholic Church, and progressives who sought a secular, democratic republic with land reforms and workers' rights. When a left-leaning government was elected, conservative factions in the military, led by General Francisco Franco and others, launched a coup against the Spanish Republic. The coup failed to seize control of the entire country, leading to a bloody civil war between the nationalists, led by Franco, and the Republicans, made up of various left-wing groups, including communists, anarchists, and socialists. The conflict quickly drew international attention. Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy supported Franco with weapons, troops, and aircraft, while the Soviet Union backed the Republicans. Thousands of volunteers from around the world joined the fight on the Republican side through the international brigades. The war became a testing ground for new forms of warfare, including aerial bombings on civilian targets, like the infamous bombing of Guernica by German planes. The Spanish population suffered immensely. Cities were destroyed, families were divided, and atrocities were committed on both sides. Executions, repression, and political purges were widespread. Despite initial resistance, the better organized and heavily supported nationalist forces gradually gained ground. By early 1939, Madrid and other Republican strongholds fell. Franco declared victory and established a military dictatorship that would rule Spain for the next 36 years. The Spanish Civil War left deep scars on the country, with many killed, imprisoned, or forced into exile. It also served as a warning to the world about the growing threat of fascism before the outbreak of World War II. The memory of the war remained a sensitive and divisive issue in Spain for generations. Asterisk. Spain's colonial military conflicts spanned several centuries as it expanded and maintained a vast empire across the Americas, Asia, and parts of Africa. Following the voyages of Christopher Columbus in 1492, Spain rapidly established control over large territories in the New World. Military expeditions, known as conquistadors, played a central role in this expansion. Figures like Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro led campaigns that defeated powerful indigenous empires such as the Aztecs in Mexico and the Incas in Peru. These conquests were often brutal, involving advanced weaponry, alliances with rival tribes, and the spread of European diseases that decimated local populations. After initial conquests, Spain faced resistance and uprisings from native peoples who sought to reclaim their land and autonomy. Military force was frequently used to suppress these rebellions. including the Pueblo Revolt in present-day New Mexico and the Mapuche resistance in Chile. Spain also fought to defend its colonies from rival European powers. In the Caribbean and the Americas, frequent battles occurred with the British, French, and Dutch, who challenged Spanish dominance through piracy, privateering, and full-scale invasions. In the Philippines, Spanish forces clashed with Muslim sultanates in the southern islands and dealt with periodic revolts against colonial rule. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the Spanish Empire began to weaken, and independence movements gained momentum across Latin America. Spain's military struggled to contain revolutionary leaders like Simón Bolívar and José de San Martín. Prolonged wars of independence erupted in countries such as Mexico, Argentina, and Colombia. Despite Spain's efforts to maintain control, through military campaigns, most of its colonies in the Americas gained independence by the 1820s. Spain's colonial military engagements reflected the broader global struggles for power, resources, and identity, and their outcomes reshaped the political landscape of the modern world. After the death of General Francisco Franco in 1975, Spain transitioned from dictatorship to democracy, which significantly reshaped its military structure and global role. The newly democratic government initiated reforms to modernize the armed forces and align them with Western defense standards. One of the most significant milestones came in 1982, when Spain joined the North Atlantic Treaty Organization NATO, signaling a major shift in its international orientation. This decision was controversial at the time, with strong public opposition. But a national referendum in 1986 confirmed Spain's continued membership under specific conditions, such as the prohibition of nuclear weapons on Spanish soil and into NATO's military command structure, which was later revised. Spain's participation in NATO marked its growing commitment to collective security and peacekeeping missions. The Spanish military began to take part in a wide range of international operations, including missions in Bosnia, Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Lebanon, and Mali. These missions often involved humanitarian assistance, disaster response, counter-terror, and stabilization efforts, reflecting a broader role beyond traditional warfare. Spain contributed troops, naval forces, and air support to NATO-led operations, emphasizing interoperability with allied nations. Domestically, Spain restructured its armed forces by professionalizing the military, phasing out conscription in 2001, and increasing investment in defense technology and training. Its military now includes modernized army, navy, and air force branches equipped to respond to both national defense and international obligations. Spain also cooperates with the European Union on defense initiatives and contributes to multinational battle groups and rapid response units. In recent years, Spain has played a key role in NATO's southern flank strategy, particularly regarding North African stability and maritime security in the Mediterranean. Its military presence supports counter-piracy efforts, refugee monitoring, and joint exercises that strengthen alliances and regional cooperation. The history of Spain's military conflicts is a journey through centuries of conquest, resistance, transformation, and cooperation. From the long struggle of the Reconquista to the ambition of the Spanish Armada, from the devastation of the Napoleonic and Civil Wars to the complex legacies of its colonial campaigns, Spain's past has been shaped by battles both at home and abroad. Yet in modern times, Spain has evolved from an empire of war into a democratic nation committed to peacekeeping and international collaboration through alliances like NATO. Each chapter reflects not only power and politics, but the lives, choices, and resilience of the people who lived through them. Understanding this history helps us recognize the cost of conflict and the value of unity, learning, and progress in building a more stable future. Asterisk.